speaker, Sérgio Henrique Cabral Sant'Ana is a special advisor to the Minister of Education in Brazil, who drafted milestone homeschooling legislation in Brazil, which is hopefully will become actually the law in Brazil. We will see. He is the founder of one of the most recognized firms in the field of educational law in Brazil, and is a professor of educational law. Special advisor, the floor is yours.
Hi, Michael. Nice to see everybody. It's an honor to be here on this Global Policymakers Forum of Home Education. And I think to start, we need to at first address a little explanation about the Brazilian constitution and legal system. Differently from the United States, where the constitution delegates large part of the legislative power to the states, in Brazil, the National Congress is responsible for the regulation power over the majority of the matters. In the case of basic education, the Lei de Diretrizes e Bases da Educação Nacional, which is the general Brazilian educational law, states that the responsibility for education is divided by the federal, states, and city systems, with the federal government creating general regulations and financing programs, and the states and cities being directly responsible for the regulation and supervising of schools. So these obligations is split by the federal government, states government, and city government, which create a very complex scenario to introduce homeschooling in Brazil. Homeschooling in Brazil, I will explain this later. In a practical analysis, is not legal, as has been decided by the Supremo Tribunal Federal, which is the Brazilian Supreme Court. The current scenario here is very uncomfortable because thousands of families have been already practicing homeschooling, but in a complete absence of legal certainty. For more than 15 years, Brazilian families have been fighting to have home education regulated by the government, by the Congress. However, even though there have been some legal projects addressing the topic in Congress and some controversy around the question, Brazilian families believe that homeschooling is perfectly compatible with the constitutional law and test of the law. But in September 2018, the Supreme Court completely changed the legal situation, as it declared that even though some home education did not represent a disrespect to the Constitution, it required regulation in order to be considered legal. So in one act, every single family in the country that have been teaching their children at home was put in a legal jeopardy. So the situation in Brazil is that we are kind of in a gray area, because at the same time that the Supreme Court says it is compatible with the Constitution, it says that homeschooling needs regulation to become a reality in the country. In my opinion, it's the same thing as that I say is not legal. That's the truth, because family can't do homeschooling like they should be able to do. In Brazil, most resistance to approving homeschooling law comes from the left-wing parties and the educational system bureaucrats' common interests. The left-wing campaigners don't want families to be free from educational system indoctrination, which is historically very solid in the country. On the other hand, educational system bureaucrats always fight to avoid any measure that is likely to decrease taxpayers' money that goes to them. Naturally, this is one of the first impacts of homeschooling, one of the first that will arise in that case. Jair Bolsonaro administration recently sent medida provisória, which is a bill that works as the same way, works similar to executive order in the United States. But after previous discussions with Congress leaders, it has been decided that the text would be sent to the Congress in the form of a regular bill. We strongly believe that this recent text is likely easier to be approved than the previous ones existent, because it doesn't center all the obligations in the federal government and regulate that the children should be enrolled in already existing schools that are supervised by the local governments and will be responsible for receiving and registering educational activity reports that will be prepared by the fathers, the parents, and applying annual tests to the children. This aspect makes unnecessary that the federal government creates a whole new national structure on the Ministry of Education to regulate and supervise homeschooling, simplifying law enforcement and providing a scenario where enrollments could be immediately carried out. We hope this way that soon homeschooler families in Brazil have the rights to educate their children at home guaranteed by a federal law with the appropriate legal certainty, ending this long time of political battle and suffering for everybody. Thank you.